Okay, so what we want to do next is create the login form. So this is the login section here. This will be authenticated with Firebase authentication, so we will set that up later on. What I first want to do is create the login page. So if we go on to pages and create a new page in here named login.tsx, and essentially what I want to do is bring in what I have. So essentially we are getting container and main from the shared styles over here. Going back in my login, we have a login container which we need to create, and then the login form component which we also need to create. So if I copy this one out, and for now I want to put in a h1 of sign in, and I also want to create the login styles. So if I go into styles in here and create a new style component files named login styles.ts. And what I want to do is import the container or the login container into here. So essentially, it has a background color of white, a display of flex, flex direction of column, and align items of center. And instead of exporting it here, we can also use it like this and further extend with further styles by using the comma like so. So now, going back in my login component, we are importing the login container now from styles/login styles. All I want to do now is save everything, and going into here, if I go onto the sign in link and click through to here, if I go onto /login and press enter, we now have a h1 of sign in being rendered onto the page. So the next step is we need to create this login form component. So if we create that now, so login form. So if I go into my components and create a new folder named login form, this will have an index.tsx in here. And if I do rafce and name this login form, all I need to do now is import this. So all we do is import like so. And now we should see login form being rendered on the page. So if we go back in here, we have a component, which is the login form component. It has a sign in title, a label of email, an import of email, a password label, and a password import. We have a sign in button and a create your Amazon account button. So let's create the UI for that. So in login form, I also need to create a style.tsx. So in here, first off, I want to have a h1 saying sign in, which it is doing now, and then a form. In this form, we will have a label, which we do, an input of email, like so, a label of password, and also an input type of password. And now if I save, you can see here everything is being rendered correctly. What I also want to do is import the style into the login form. So essentially we have a container which gives it a width of 300 pixels. So we need to replace the div with the container like so. And now if I save all, you can see it's starting to shape up a little bit now. We need to style the labels. So if I go into here and instead of H5, this will be label. We also have a sign in button and a register button. So we need to render them out as well. So under the input type of password, I'm just going to render the sign in button coming from the styles. And then we also have a P style of O, which I will also bring in. And then finally, we will have the register button as well. So instead of register, what I'm going to do is just type in create your Amazon account. What I also want to do is add a cursor pointer onto the sign in. So if we go into our styled, and on the button here, we would add a cursor pointer, and we can also add it to the register button as well. But essentially, they have different styles on here. They are similar, but the colors are different, as you can see. For the form, we have a width of 300 pixels, a display of flex, a flex direction of column, a bit of padding around it, and a border around the component of light gray. And then we have some styling also inside. And then for the inputs, what we want to do is add a margin top, and that will be of 5 pixels as well. Okay, so now that the UI is complete on the login page, what we now need to do is keep track of the email and password so that when we sign in or create the Amazon account, we have access to what is in the inputs at the time. So the way to do that is with a hook called use state. So just before my return block, I'm going to create 2 pieces of state in here. So the first one is going to be the email, so const email, and set email is equal to react.useState, And I'm going to do the same for the password. And these are equal to a use state of an empty string. So what I want to do now is in my inputs in here, give a value, and the value for the email will be the email piece of state that I have created up here. So the value initially will be an empty string, as you can see. So I just need to do the same for the password. So value is equal to password, like so. So now if I save, we now have pieces of value attached to the inputs. So now what we need to do is keep track of when we change and type something in. So if I was to type something in now, nothing gets typed into here. So we need to have a onChange handler. So first of all, what we need to pass in is an onChange handler to the input of email. So if I type in onChange is equal to an arrow function. So in here, we want to set the email. So this is the setter function, which is updating the email state to the e.target.value, so the event.target.value. And what we need to do is pass in the event here as well. So now if I save, as you can see, the onChange method is setting the email to e.target.value. So if I was to console log the email, first of all, and now save, what I want to do is inspect in my console to see if the email is updating. So I'm just going to put test. And as you can see, the email is updating each time I type in. So now all we need to do is the same for the password. So instead of the onChange being set email this time, this will be set password. And now if I save, that should update as well, and we can type in as well. So now that we have the inputs working correctly, what we need to do now is make sure the buttons are working correctly. So what I'm going to do is create two functions so that when we click on them, it takes in the values in here, and then we can authenticate using Firebase authentication. So first of all, on my sign in button, I'm going to have an on click in here, which invokes a function, and this function will be login user. So we need to create that, and we also need to prevent the default behavior as well. So passing in the event like so. So now if I save, I'm just going to copy this and do the same thing for the register button, but instead of login user, it's going to be register user. So just up top here, under the use states, what I want to do is create the login user. So const of login user. I want the console log logged in as a string, and the event is already being typed in for me by TypeScript. So the event will be a React form event, so a HTML form element. So now if I save, I just need to do the same for the register user. So if we do const register user, which is pretty much the same thing, but this one is a button element. So now instead of console log of logged in, I'm just going to console log registered. So now we have created two functions that are hooked up to the buttons. We just need to test them now. So if we inspect, and in my console here, I'm just going to click sign in, which shows logged in, which is working, and also registered, which is also working. So all I want to do as well before this is e.prevent default, so it doesn't refresh the page when we click the button. And then if we try again to sign in, it says logged in, and then also create your Amazon account says register. So now what we will do is create a Firebase account. We will be using the latest Firebase version, which is version 9. And then what we will do is get the Firebase account hooked up to our Next.js application as well.